You're watching Fugitive Red Eye, and welcome to another Fallout review. I think this could be expected, just given how many of the Fallout games I've been playing lately. I actually intend to review all of them once I complete them. After completing Fallout 3, I moved swiftly on to Fallout New Vegas. And with New Vegas, I did 3 out of the 4 main endings. I say main endings because there's a lot of little variations you get depending on the companions you get, what you did with them, where you stand with a lot of the side factions, and other little details like that. Fallout New Vegas is considered by a lot of fans to be the greatest Fallout game of all time. And I can see why, though I don't agree. I think Fallout 3 is better. That said, I can see the argument for Fallout New Vegas being the better game. And I do think that there are slightly more role-playing aspects in it, but I don't think it's a night and day difference like people pretend it is. Keep in mind, I probably will have quite a few comparisons to Fallout 3 in this review because, for whatever reason, New Vegas fans tend to be really obnoxious. They're not content with just talking about how good New Vegas is, and have to somehow say Fallout 3 is bad. So I'm just gonna get this out of the way now. People like to say that Fallout New Vegas improved the gameplay drastically and is a role-playing game where Fallout 3 isn't. This makes no sense to me, because the gameplay is nearly fucking identical. There's a few tweaks here and there that make things different. For instance, you level up faster in New Vegas, the level cap is much, much higher, and poison was added back in. Other than that, a lot of things are kind of the same. Maybe there's slightly more of a focus on the skills than there were in Fallout 3 and making your weapons more effective, but in all honesty, Fallout 3, the weapons are affected by your skills too, and I don't think it's the night and day difference with that either. In fact, I'm just gonna get a lot of these out of the way right at the start, these annoying comparisons, and give you my thoughts on them. Keep in mind, I do not intend to shit on New Vegas this entire review. I love New Vegas. In fact, again, I see the argument for it being the best one. I just prefer Fallout 3 for a lot of different reasons. But one of the criticisms people give Fallout 3 is they say that it's too linear. I'd argue New Vegas is far more linear to a fault where it's actually really fucking annoying. Fallout 3, you can just explore. You can walk all over the wasteland and go where you want. Yes, there's metros you have to go through to get to some areas, but notwithstanding those metros, you can walk all over the entire map for the most part. Not to mention, those metros themselves are actually fairly fun to explore dungeons, and Fallout New Vegas has no dungeons. There's a few mountains and stuff, but you can easily climb up them or walk around them. New Vegas, you have to follow the roads all the time. It almost actively discourages exploration. Because if you don't follow the road, there's a bunch of mountains everywhere that you can't climb, even when they're not that steep, and you should easily be able to climb them. On top of that, if you are able to kind of wiggle your way up there, there's invisible walls blocking areas that are not even an incline. And then, if you're lucky enough to get off the roads enough, there's cazadors everywhere, which are these annoying fucking poisonous wasps that do a shitload of damage, swarm up on you, and have a poison effect that absolutely annihilates your HP. Not to mention, the anti-venom used for it is super rare as far as I've seen. I've only come across like 4 of them in my entire playthrough. And keep in mind, I did 3 out of the 4 endings. Now granted, I used the same character and just had a different save point that I loaded, so I guess you could make the argument that I only really did maybe 1.5 playthroughs, because basically I got to the end of Legion, which is the first one that I beat. I saved right before the end of it, then did the Yes Man one. I also had a save back in the Securitron Vault where I loaded, so that one was a lot farther back, but I also breezed through it a lot quicker because I didn't do all the DLC on that one. Which, by the way, I did download all the DLC, which I also did for Fallout 3. The DLC in New Vegas is great, but I have things to say about each of them, which we will get into as I go along. I'm probably not going to get too caught up in the more comparisons between this and Fallout 3. One other thing I will mention is a lot of people like to use Power of Adam as a reason to say that Fallout 3's choices are bad, because they say it's like cartoonishly evil. But at the end of Lonesome Road in New Vegas, you can literally obliterate California with ICBMs. So it makes no sense to me that you say, oh no, you blow up an entire town killing everyone. Why would you ever want to do that? You destroy an entire country, the New California Republic, at the end of Lonesome Road if you want. And like, granted, I assume it's mostly just California. That's still pretty big. And it's way bigger than Megaton, to say the very least. And I'm sure there was a ton of civilians, women, children, whatever there. So it makes no sense to me when people criticize Power of Adam, but are totally fine with that choice at the end of Lonesome Road. Now this one's really, really minor, so keep that in mind. One other thing that I personally, and this is a personal nitpick, this is not an objective bad thing with the game, I don't like that there's not a lot of super mutants. I thought super mutants were really cool. Like, granted, they're there, Jacobstown exists, And they're in a few spots on the map, but they have way less spawns in New Vegas than they did in 3. Admittedly, they have the Nightkin, which are really cool, and I like them a lot. And in fact, the Nightkin are surviving members of the original generation of Super Mutants from Fallout 1, so that's a nice callback. I just wish there was more of them. But enough of that, let's actually talk about New Vegas. New Vegas opens with you getting shot in the head by a guy named Benny. At the beginning of the game, you have to track him down, and you go from town to town getting information trying to find him. Eventually, you get your revenge. I talked my way into having him and me in a room alone and just killed him, but there are plenty of other options. You can seduce him, at which point he'll leave, and you have to kind of track him down again to the fort, which is the base of the Legion. And then while you're there, you can either kill him, have the Legion kill him, or get the Legion to banish him from the Wasteland. The Wasteland in Fallout New Vegas is the Mojave, which consists primarily of Nevada, but there's a little bit of Colorado in there, and you can go to Utah in the DLC Honest Hearts. New Vegas takes place, I think, 4 years after Fallout 3. It's something like that. It was like 4 or 5, if I remember. You play as a courier for the Mojave Express, which is a delivery company, and as you're going through that, that's when you get caught and shot in the head, because you're trying to deliver a platinum chip, which is this chip that can be used to basically take control of New Vegas, or to expand the power that Mr. House has. Now, Mr. House is at the center of New Vegas, and he's a guy who's lived for hundreds of years by prolonging himself with technology. And when you meet him face-to-face, quote-unquote, the first time, it's on a computer screen. He's hooked up to a computer network where he controls a vast army of Securitrons, which are these really powerful robots. Mr. House himself is one of the 4 main factions you can side with in the game, the factions themselves being the Legion, Mr. House, the NCR, and Yes Man. In no particular order there. The only one that I have not sided with in a playthrough yet is the NCR. I actually do plan to go back and play through siding with the NCR. When I do that, I will be doing a completely new playthrough for that, just to get the full experience, and I will be getting all the companions if possible, which is something I was unable to do because I killed Boone. And since I killed Boone, I decided not to actually try to get the others because I was happy with just Lily and Rex, which are the 2 I primarily used. I did get Cass killed by the Van Graffs. But yeah, the companions, I will say, I think are probably overall better in New Vegas than they were in Fallout 3. I do still think Fox and Dogmeat are the most iconic ones for me. But Rex and Lily were great. I loved them. And I thought Boone was pretty cool too. Whereas in Fallout 3, there's only a few that I really like, which is Fox, Dogmeat, and Jericho. Clover's alright. I'm okay with Clover. And Sharon's okay too. But again, I do think New Vegas does have the better companions overall, even though I think Fox personally is the best companion in the series so far for me. Fallout New Vegas also added in a hardcore mode, which I have yet to try, although I might do a playthrough of one day, which makes the game considerably harder because you have to eat, sleep, drink, and your ammo has weight, as do healing items, I'm pretty sure. Also, your companions can die, which is another difference between Fallout New Vegas and Fallout 3, is in Fallout 3 your companions can die when you have them with you, whereas in New Vegas they cannot die when they're with you, unless you're on hardcore mode. They just get knocked unconscious because they're marked as essential. I can see ups and downs to both of these systems. On the one hand, I like the fact that your companions can die in Fallout 3, but on the other hand, I do like not having to worry about that too, so I think that they're both pretty good choices, so I don't necessarily think one is worse than the other with that regard, but it is a difference nonetheless. Another difference I found is I found ammo to be much more scarce, at least early on, than it was in Fallout 3. And I personally had a lot of a harder time getting through New Vegas. I'm ashamed to admit this, but there were multiple times I had to lower the difficulty to very easy. Now granted, at the start of my Fallout 3 playthrough I had a similar problem, but ultimately I got a lot better at Fallout and have been playing it on normal ever since with no issue. In New Vegas, I constantly had to lower the difficulty, especially in the DLC, which brings me to Dead Money, which is a cool atmosphere. I really love the atmosphere to Dead Money. And it's got an interesting story too. But one thing that's really fucking frustrating about Dead Money is it's fucking hard as balls. First off, you have a slave collar around your neck that if you get too close to a radio or speaker, unless you disable the radio or speaker, your head will explode if you're not quick enough. Some of them can't be disabled, and you have to just kind of run past. If you have to kill any of the companions that are in Dead Money, then your head will explode if you don't get out of that area quick enough. Basically, that adds one layer of difficulty. On top of that, you don't have any of your equipment you had before it, which means that you're going in with very little equipment, very little healing items. Now granted, if you get stuff for the stim packs on the vending machine, and your skill's good for that, and you have enough chips, then that isn't theoretically a problem. You could theoretically exploit the shit out of that and get a bunch of them. I didn't really do that, so a lot of the times I relied on drinking out of toilets and stuff to heal, which would also get me irradiated. There is an auto dock once you get inside the casino that helped immensely, but it's fucking difficult. That said, it is a fun challenge. It's just really frustrating at times. Let's talk about the other DLCs as well. In Honest Hearts, that one was actually fairly easy. I didn't have a single problem on Honest Hearts. That was easy all the way through. But Honest Hearts does have one of my favorite characters in Fallout in general, which is Joshua Graham, the Burn Man. He's super interesting. He used to work with the Legion. He's part of Zion. I think he's supposed to be Mormon, like sort of that's what Zion is the new Canaanites. They started sort of a Mormon faction, in a sense. Obviously, being a former Mormon and from Utah myself, I am a little bit familiar with that. But Joshua Graham is also very intimidating and mysterious. And overall, I just think he's really cool. And you go to Zion's Canyon National Park, which is a place I've actually been in real life, so that was kind of cool too. Other than that, there's also Lonesome Road. Lonesome Road wasn't the most difficult throughout. I'm talking about the difficulty just because New Vegas is something where I did struggle with the difficulty. But overall, the difficulty wasn't too terrible in Lonesome Road. However, there were a few spikes where I did have to lower it again. Particularly the final battle with Ulysses was really fucking hard and really frustrating. In addition to that, the tunnelers that you would find in all the tunnels, really fucking annoying too, so that was really irritating as well. Very difficult with those areas. See, I tried to stay on normal as long as possible in New Vegas, and just lower it when I needed to. I did find myself needing to lower it much more on the DLC than the base game, but there was a couple times I needed to in the base game as well. And again, this is more for my own lack of skill, but there were things that did irritate me as well, such as the Cazadors, which we've already mentioned. The other DLC is Old World Blues, which I think is my favorite of the bunch. You get abducted and become a lobotomite. And while you become a lobotomite, you have all these enhancements. One of which is immunity to poison, which you get to keep at the end, which was fantastic, because that meant that Cazadors weren't anywhere near as much of a threat. They still did a lot of damage, but I was immune to poison, so in all honesty, I might find that Old World Blues is absolutely essential in doing in any playthrough I do. And while you're there, your brain was taken out, hence you're a lobotomite. And then you eventually have to find your brain and get it back. I think you can actually leave your brain there. I didn't do that. But I did keep the cyborg other organs, because, again, I wanted to keep all those boosts. But you do get a boost when you get your brain back as well. And I have no doubt that you would with your actual natural organs being returned as well. Old World Blues is really fun, feels like an old sci-fi movie, and overall, I think was the best DLC of the bunch. And in Old World Blues, I did not once have to lower the difficulty. In fact, up until that point, Old World Blues being the first DLC that I did, I had not lowered the difficulty at all. One thing I do think is true, though, is in Old World Blues, Dead Money, and Lonesome Road, all of them have level recommendations. I think these are far too low given the challenge that you encounter there. Another thing that I find very interesting with levels, when I did my run with the Legion, I was level 40, and I was a similar level when I was siding with Yes Man. Both of those times, at the Hoover Dam, I had a very, very difficult time. However, going on normal, again, normal difficulty for all of these. Actually, I did go on very easy for part of the Yes Man run, just because I had to go to work, and I wanted to get through it as quick as possible, but for most of it, I was on normal for the entirety of the Legion run on the dam. But when I did the Mr. House run, I was on normal the entire time, and I was a much lower level. I was only like level 25 or something like that. Considerably lower level. And despite that, I found it considerably easier than the other two runs where I was a much higher level. Now, I know that the enemies scale with you in level, but it's ridiculous to me that being nearly 20 levels lower would be easier. Another thing that was interesting about the game was the way that armor worked. It brought back the damage threshold system, which was in the older Fallouts as well, which Fallout 3 ditched in favor of damage resistance. Now, with that damage threshold system, there are many times that you'll shoot an enemy, your bullet will hit them, but it will do absolutely no damage because of the armor. This got incredibly frustrating because it happens far too frequently for my liking personally. Basically just making a lot of enemies feel like bullet sponges, which is generally a thing I felt was kind of the case in New Vegas overall. Now let's talk about the factions. I've already briefly mentioned which ones I have sided with, which is the Legion, Mr. House, and Yes Man. For whatever reason, a lot of New Vegas fans don't like the Legion. I thought the Legion was great to side with. Obviously, they're the more evil group of the bunch, but again, it's a role-playing game. Are people just anti-fun? The Legion's great, and the thing is I think all of the factions in New Vegas are fantastic. In all honesty, for me, the hardest choice in New Vegas was picking a faction to side with. So overall, I think that was really well done. I will also say New Vegas does have a better ending than Fallout 3. I can say that definitively. I will give credit where credit's due, despite my own bias. And I do like the fact that the ending is completely different depending on who you side with, what your standing was with the side factions, and other things like that, companions, etc. Now, although I acknowledge that the ending to New Vegas is better, I still really like the ending to Fallout 3, and I overall prefer the story of Fallout 3, just because I find it much more interesting with a Vault Dweller escaping and then figuring out the wasteland in search of your dad. I like how personal the search for your dad is, and trying to fulfill his goal. That could be a matter of personal preference, but I really think that story just hit me a lot harder. That's not to say that New Vegas had a bad story, because New Vegas had an amazing story. And again, I think the argument could be made either way for that. And even though New Vegas has the better ending, I will say the final level of Fallout 3, Take It Back, I think is the most underrated thing. Yeah, it's just follow Liberty Prime in a straight line to the Purifier, but it's so cool! Like, again, I don't get why people hate it. Like, yes, it's linear, but it's one quest. It's really cool. But again, I digress. We're talking about New Vegas, so let's get back to talking about the ending here. There are also elements of karma in the ending, although karma is hardly really relevant in Fallout New Vegas, and that is one of my things that I didn't like as much, because everything is focused on the faction rather than karma. So in your head, when you're doing stuff, you're not thinking, is this right or wrong? You're thinking, how does this benefit the faction I am working with, or does it go against them? I think that's something I didn't like as much. I think the reputation system was really good, but I don't like just how much it overtook karma. I know that reputation was the system in place in Fallout 2, and that they didn't have karma. So I get what they were going for, because again, a lot of the team behind Fallout 2 were behind New Vegas as well. I just personally preferred karma and thought that it was better overall. But I do like the reputation system nonetheless. And I do like that when you're wearing an outfit that belongs to a faction, it disguises you as a member of that faction. I thought that was a really nice addition, so again, I thought that was really cool. Now for the tone of New Vegas. A lot of people say New Vegas is more in line with Fallout 1 and 2 than 3 was. I just don't see it, at least as far as tone. Maybe some gameplay tweaks here and there, but I would say tone-wise, Fallout 3 is much closer. The opening to Fallout 3 very much mirrors the opening to Fallout 1, and it's a very dark, depressing, apocalyptic feeling. Not to mention Fallout 1 and Fallout 3 both use songs from the Ink Spots for the intro, and in fact the song used in Fallout 3 was originally supposed to be used in Fallout 1. Whereas in Fallout New Vegas, it doesn't really feel post-apocalyptic, it feels neo-western. Which, again, is great in its own right, I just don't think it feels more like Fallout 1 and 2 than 3 does. Again, this is coming from someone who has never played Fallout 1 and 2, so do take what I say there with a grain of salt, but I have looked into Fallout 1 and 2 a decent amount, and I've watched the intros to both. And I've been getting caught up with lore and stuff, and I do plan to play through those eventually, and will be reviewing them when I complete them as well. Another neat little addition was the weapon mods, however, I didn't really use them. In addition to that, it also had different types of ammo, which initially I wasn't using very much, but towards the end of the game I started buying a lot more of. And while I think weapon mods and the different types of ammo were cool and all, sometimes I think less is more, and keeping it simple, I think, sometimes, speaks volumes, personally. Again, I don't have a problem with them adding them, and ultimately it's not a criticism, but I do think, keep it simple, stupid, right? You know the old saying, KISS, keep it simple, stupid. Speaking of weapons, there was a DLC I didn't get, which was the Gunrunner pack. I thought that was kind of a dumb idea for a DLC, so I didn't buy any of that, or any of the, weapons and clothes packs. But I did buy the main DLCs that were actually story add-ons. Mr. House is also one of my favorite characters. I think overall, Fallout New Vegas had a lot of my favorite characters in the franchise in it. So again, gotta give it credit there as well. Ulysses was really cool in Lonesome Road. And Dr. Mobius and the other doctors in Old World Blues were pretty good characters too. Also, in all of my playthroughs, I wiped out the Brotherhood of Steel. I have not sided with them, had them as a friendly faction yet. Again, they're a side faction in New Vegas. And at no point did I have power armor in my New Vegas playthroughs, because I didn't side with the Brotherhood of Steel at all. And I know that it actually takes a really long time to get the power armor with the Brotherhood of Steel. I know there's other ways to do it, but I didn't really look much into it, because I just wanted to play through the game blind and have fun with it. One other little difference in the game was the way that the skill checks worked in New Vegas versus the way they worked in Fallout 3. In New Vegas, the skill checks essentially require you to have a certain amount of skill points, and then you are guaranteed to succeed in that said skill check. Whereas in Fallout 3, you have a certain percentage based on a skill check, and that percentage gets higher and higher based on your level in that skill. Speech is the most commonly used one in Fallout 3. And I do like that there is still an element of random chance in Fallout 3. I actually think it's kind of a detriment that it's just guaranteed in Fallout New Vegas. However, I could see the argument being made that it's a lot less frustrating that way, and that when you have a high enough skill, you should be able to clear it. So again, I could see the argument being made in the other direction as well. I do also think that it's cool in New Vegas that your skill checks all give you experience rather than just the speech ones when you're talking. Because in Fallout 3, the other ones that you use to clear speech things besides the speech skill don't give you EXP a lot of the time. New Vegas also had a lot of cool new creatures. It did get rid of some, obviously, because it's a different location. But it did have a lot of cool, interesting new ones, except for Cazadors, they can go to hell. It also had some legendary creatures. The only one that I actually fought and killed was the legendary Bloatfly. In my later playthrough, I might go back and fight the other ones. Another thing that I do think is a pretty big difference between Fallout 3 and Fallout New Vegas is the towns. In all honesty, Fallout 3 has way better towns. They're all memorable in their own right. Some are obviously better than others, but Fallout New Vegas only really has a few memorable towns, being Jacobstown, Freeside, the Strip, which are both kind of just part of New Vegas. And that's mainly it. Like, don't get me wrong, I can still remember Prim, Good Springs, Novak, and a bunch of others, but none of them are quite as memorable. Fallout 3 also had a lot more vaults, and the vaults they had were also much more memorable than the vaults in New Vegas. Don't get me wrong, I like the vaults in New Vegas, it's just 3 had better and more vaults, I felt. And I feel like that one thing that it does, even though Fallout New Vegas has a much, much bigger map, there's a lot less stuff on it. Most of it's empty. And given the way that there's a lot of mountains and things blocking the paths, and you have to basically go on the road, or else you're not going to get anywhere, and if you do, you're just going to die horribly, it's not as memorable of a location for me. As a wise man once said, patrolling the Mojave almost makes me wish for nuclear winter. I do like that most of the DLCs have companions that you have for the DLCs in them. I thought that was really cool. I think Dog and God were my favorite. They were great. Other than Joshua Graham, I really like Joshua Graham. He might be my favorite Fallout character. I know there's also a bunch of quests that I didn't get, because there's like 75 side quests in New Vegas, compared to the, I think, 17 in Fallout 3. I think those numbers are right. Somebody told me those, and I'm taking their word on it, so we'll see. But I think it goes without saying that Fallout New Vegas has considerably more side quests. I think that for the most part, Fallout 3 has better side quests. I think it's a quality versus quantity argument. And I do think that there are really good ones in New Vegas. Don't get me wrong, New Vegas has some pretty good side quests too. But a lot of them you have to go through specific hidden things to get to a lot of them. So I know that there's a bunch that I missed out on. And that's fine. I plan on doing another playthrough, like I said. New Vegas also lets you have sex with characters, so that was pretty cool. Also, I will say that New Vegas has a really great sense of humor. I love the humor in New Vegas. I think it's much funnier than Fallout 3. Not to say that Fallout 3 doesn't have its humor, because it does, but New Vegas, I think, does do the humor a little better, too. So overall, I think New Vegas is a great Fallout game, and I understand why most people list it as their favorite, and why a lot of people argue that it's objectively the best. I personally prefer Fallout 3, and think that it's a lot better myself personally, but that didn't take away from the fact that New Vegas is an amazing game. So far, the Fallout games I've played are Fallout 3, Fallout New Vegas, Fallout 4, and Fallout Brotherhood of Steel. The only ones I beat are 3 in New Vegas. I am currently doing playthroughs of 4 and Brotherhood of Steel at the time of this recording. And I'll obviously say that New Vegas has 4 and Brotherhood of Steel easily beat hands down. There's no question there at all. New Vegas is an amazing game. It's my second favorite Fallout game thus far. And if you haven't played it for some reason, you're absolutely missing out. It does deserve the praise it gets. But I do think that, again, Fallout 3 getting hate because of that doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. Because I think that they're both very similar games, and they're very fun in their own rights. Luckily, both are amazing, and they're in the same engine, so they're very similar. New Vegas effectively feels like a Fallout 3.5 to me, but I do think that the Western tone and the different location definitely make it its own thing. They make it a great game, and obviously the tweaks in gameplay do make it different as well. And while some of the changes I'm not as big of a fan of, I don't like that you only get a perk every other level. And yes, I am well aware that you get a perk every 3 levels in Fallout 1. I can understand why people would want that as balancing. I just don't particularly like it. I like to make myself more powerful. I think that there is more of a difference in levels in Fallout 3 versus New Vegas. Because when I level up in Fallout 3, I felt so much stronger. In New Vegas, I felt a slight increase. But I think that's part of the fact that you just level up much quicker, and the level cap is 50, as opposed to Fallout 3 is 30. But yeah, Fallout New Vegas is an amazing game. I will be playing it plenty more as well. I absolutely loved it. Some elements of the fan base I'm not the biggest fan of, but the game itself is solid, it's amazing. I would absolutely play it many, many more times, much like Fallout 3. Anyway, this has been Fugitive Red Eye. Have a good one. Toodles.
I'm gonna fucking die here, Jack!